What's going on, everybody? This is Marcus Paul with Scene Chicago. I'm here on the scene with Tom Tresser, of the author of Chicago is Not Broke and Civic Labs, and a whole bunch of other things that we're going to find out about today. Tom, how you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for bringing me on your show here.
Absolutely, absolutely. We're going to have a good time. Crazy story is when I first moved to Chicago about 4 years ago, I walked into a used bookstore and I found this book called Chicago's Not Broke. And, you know, as a journalist, it kind of caught my eye because I didn't realize people said that the reason that there's problems in the city is because the city has no money. That thought didn't occur to me. So then I read the book, and I mean, it is filled with practical, useful, understandable information that you know, if people like to complain, they say, "Oh, the government's corrupt and all this and that," but they don't want to learn anything. You know what I'm saying? So thank you for trying to let people learn and understand exactly what's going on.
Well, I call myself a civic educator and public defender.
Okay, what does that mean?
Well, I've been in Chicago since 1980, but my first voter registration campaign was in 1973, and I pretty much dedicated my life to grassroots democracy. And the founders back in the day, you know, put the steering wheel of the country in our hands. You know, it's a journey. We're not complete with our journey, but the idea is that the average person is supposed to be able to have a say in how this country is operated, how their communities are operated. And so they thought that in order to do that, folks had to know shit. They had to be smart. They had to know basics of civics and to be informed and engaged and give a crap to be able to run the ship of state, so to speak, because in the old days it was the elite white men, propertied white men, educated propertied white men. So in order to make a change, they said folks got to learn, that they got to get engaged, and they got to do. So that's why I call myself a civic educator. Now, the public defender part has to do with the word public. So I invite our listeners and watchers to contemplate that word for a while. Roll it around in your tongue. Public stuff. You know, people usually say public education, public transportation, public funding, public parks, public libraries. There's a lot of things that have the word public in front of it, and if it does, I love it. So I think that public stuff in Chicago, in America, is under attack right now, and we need to be about defending and extending our public stuff. So that's why I call myself a public defender.
And a civic educator. I mean, I agree. I mean, in order for us to, you know, I've heard the saying, democracy is not a spectator sport. Right?
That's right.
I mean, you know, you gotta get involved.
You gotta suit up.
Gotta suit up. Exactly. I love it. So I'm gonna ask you a couple questions about the book here. The one thing I found extremely interesting, which, I mean, you kind of preface it by saying this obviously wasn't easy to put all this together.
Yeah.
I mean, even in the first couple pages, you talk about all the different kind of budgets and all the different kind of things you had to put together to actually get this thing complete. How long did this take you to organize, or teams to organize?
Well, it started with something called the TIF Illumination Project. So we've been running around the city since 2013 explaining tax increment financing. And I won't put your listeners to sleep.
Give it in a nutshell.
It's a special district created by the city that extracts property taxes in the name of economic development for so-called blighted or poor communities. But in reality, it works the opposite. It takes from the poor and gives to the rich. Tax increment financing is explained in the book. And we started the TIF Illumination Project, which people can look at www.tifreports.com. The Civic Lab, the founding organization that is hosting all this work, is at civiclab.us, and people can learn about this work there. But in running around to all these communities exposing TIFs, we're basically telling them that there's more money on the table to run our city than they know. And that a lot of times this money, we're talking about hundreds of millions and billions over the years, this is property tax dollars collected from inside the limits of the city of Chicago, have been gifted to wealthy developers, some of whom we can see right from the window of where we are right now, down on South State Street. So when we do that, people in the neighborhoods, especially if their local school has been closed, or their library isn't open as long as they would like it to be, or their parks suck and they want more stuff in any of those places, they say, well, how can we be broke? Because it looks like the city is showering all kinds of money on the undeserving rich while we're here, in the boondocks, so to speak, suffering, and it's not getting any better. It's getting worse. So that's the reason to put the book. So it took about a year to organize, but the authors that I approached are all subject matter experts in their fields, and they all readily agreed to write short, pithy pieces about how to save or generate revenue for the city of Chicago that is sustainable and progressive, meaning that it is not collected from the poorest of us through red light scammers,
Scammers?
That's
good.
right.
I like that.
Or garbage fees or soda pop tax and plastic bag tax and all this kind of nonsense that the mayor has put on people that hurts the working class the most.
Right.
So these solutions are not that.
I know, and when you were creating or proposing different solutions, you also said, well, one good way to save some money is to cut out the corruption in the city.
Yeah, what an idea. So according to Professor Dick Simpson at the University of Illinois, Chicago, a former alderman, he's been studying this for about 40 years. Chicago is the most corrupt city in America. Yay, we're number one.
We're number one.
Yeah.
Make America great.
Right. So, and that's, considering Mississippi and New Jersey and other cesspools of corruption and incompetence across the country. So he's been on this case and he studies it and he's looking at, who gets arrested for what, and he counts all that, and that's how he does his report. Anyway, he wrote the first chapter, and he's written about this many, many times, but what I asked him to do was to put a number on this cost of corruption. What are we talking about? And the answer is $500 million a year.
And that's what in kickbacks that we aren't getting, or in
it's like
legal fees.
Well, it's like 4 different domains. So one is outright theft. There used to be a guy named Quarters. They used to say his name was Quarters, and he worked for the city on the Skyway. And he was called Quarters because he would steal quarters. And he went to prison, years ago. But then, he came back and worked for the city again. So there's just outright theft. I had lunch with a guy from the water department a few weeks ago, and he said, well, it goes like this. If we're supposed to buy a pump or a generator to pump water out of something, we'll buy 3. The supervisor takes one home, I'll get one, and then one stays in the workshop. So it's just basic old theft. Then there's patronage and ghost payrolling. This goes way, way back, where basically someone is hired but doesn't actually have to work. So it's a patronage job, or what they call a ghost payroll.
So basically, they're just receiving a check every 2 weeks
for not doing anything because they know someone. Yeah,
or they know something.
They know an alderman, they know a state senator, they know someone high up in government. And I ran for Cook County Board President in 2010. So this is some years ago. But I had a conversation with the Director of Personnel of the county, who had been in that position for 10 years. And he said, Tom, you could fire 10% of the county workforce, which at that time would be 2,000 people. The county workforce was on the order of 20,000 plus. So you could fire 2,000 people and not miss them. Not miss them. So that's just the county. So what Dick has done is counted up all these different ways of theft and incompetence. Now there's also the opportunity costs. So if you're hired somebody who's your cousin, your nephew, your brother, whatever, to do a job and he's incompetent, then someone else has to do the job, Right. And so someone either has to do double work, or something isn't getting done. So you can think of all the opportunities that we have lost over the decades here for good government, solutions that weren't seized upon because no one can make any money off of them. So when you have a corrupt system like Chicago running to this day, the machine is alive and well. It's the enemy of excellence. It's the enemy of service, and it's the enemy of justice.
And the enemy of progress, I'm sure.
And progress, right?
We can't go anywhere without.
No, you're going backwards or in a circle. And the cost, as I said, is a measly $500 million a year. And he said that's conservative.
Right. So, you mentioned Civic Labs. I know that you guys are doing. It's not still open anymore, right?
Well,
basically explain what that was and what you guys were doing.
So the Civic Lab is a space for civic innovation, education, and collaboration. Now, we had a physical space for 2 years on the West Loop, but it was a little expensive to operate, and we didn't get the support we should have gotten. So we closed it after 2 years. And during that 2 years, we had 16 social justice or civic engagement groups working physically at the Civic Lab, engaging, doing work, meeting, convening, colliding with each other, trying stuff, conferences, on and on and on.
Can you maybe like tell us, like, tell the people what exactly, like, some examples of what you guys were working on?
Well, so one group was called Chicago Votes. So they started out with 2 staff people, but they grew and grew. We incubated them. So we're giving groups cheap space. So there was free Wi-Fi, free copying, and free coffee for doing justice. And Chicago Votes started modestly. They didn't need to buy their own copier or their phone system or anything. They just needed to show up and do their work. And so we saved them a lot of money. And with that savings, as you find in commercial incubators or spaces that are about accelerating high-tech firms for profit, we did the same, but the product was democracy. There was no profit to be made, but it was democracy and justice that was being accelerated. So Chicago Votes started with like 2 people. They grew so big they had to move out. And they went with another group that they met at the Civic Lab, and they got the space together, and they're thriving to this day. So
wow, that's great.
So that's just one, but we had groups working on housing and violence prevention and justice and Moms United Against Violence and Incarceration. These 3 ladies would be down at Cook County Jail one day dealing with moms who were shackled to their beds giving birth while in prison.
Wow.
And the next day they'd be helping some poor hysterical woman who was getting an eviction notice because she's got preyed upon by these predatory lenders, and she didn't really understand. But there's an eviction notice, and she's freaking out, and the first thing she does is hit the cell phone of one of these organizers. And so we gave them a space. We didn't even charge them.
Right.
So that was just 2 of there were 14 other groups.
And that's such a unique way of looking at a problem. I mean, it shouldn't be a unique way, but in today's day and age, it kind of is. Where, you know, I'm reminded of the protests that happened this past weekend on the Dan Ryan. Right. And I mean, I'm just kind of curious of your point of view, because there's a lot of people saying change this system and let's do something different. But then there's a group of people that are saying, okay, well, how can we actually do that?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No, so you're sort of probing this heart of my work here with what I would call intentionality and architecture and infrastructure. The left has been doing protests for decades. I mean, when I was your age, I was in the street protesting the Vietnam War. Hey, remember what that is, friends? We've been at war for 50 years straight. And so we were in the streets in 1968, 69, 70. I had hair. I actually had hair, down on my shoulders in those days, and I was called a hippie.
Right.
And they would beat me. The construction workers would curse at us, call us unpatriotic. They soon realized that this war was a no-win situation, and they joined us eventually. But this idea of marching and protesting is an ancient one, and it serves a purpose. But at some point, you've got to be strategic and govern. So you can't always be shouting and mooning Trump Tower. By the way, that's a thing.
Right.
Do that. So good for you. You moved. You aerated your butthole there, and and you flashed Trump Tower, and you think you made a statement. But guess what?
Nothing's changed.
He's still the president now. Right. What the Civic Lab is trying to do is to add some intentionality and technology. Now, if the Civic Lab were able to be funded, we're trying to raise, by the way, $500,000. But if we were funded, we would be building a tool such that when you had a mass protest like happened on Saturday down on the Dan Ryan with literally thousands of people, for one thing, you want the organizers to know who the hell's there. Because it doesn't do anybody any good, I really believe this, to bring people down, and believe me, it's a lot of work. And at the end of the day, if the organizers cannot contact me, then I can't help them, and their work can't advance. Now imagine a system such that Father Flager at the end of the afternoon would have 5,000 emails ready to go that he could then email, thank you for coming. By the way, can you donate $10 to our cause?
Right.
Can you sign a petition? And we're having a follow-up meeting tomorrow night at the blah, 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 here's the address. We're having 3, one on the north side, one on the south side, and one in the middle of the city. Go to the one nearest you. Now, I'm just back from the rep march, and I get this email. I'm thinking, these guys have got their shit together. well, oh, here's the meeting near to me. It's not that far away.
Right.
Maybe
and you're already pumped up
I'm pumped.
from the protest.
And plus, I didn't even hear the people. I mean, in this march, it wasn't a lot of speechifying,
Right.
but a lot around there are speakers, some of whom are very well known and famous, and you didn't hear them.
Yeah.
Hey, Reverend So-so was down there, and he's super famous. I'd love to meet him, shake his hand, but I didn't even get anywhere close to him. Hey, but guess what? In these follow-up meetings, Reverend So-and-so is going to be on the South Side. So the chances for me meeting him in the smaller venue, you know what? Okay, I'm going to go down and give another hour of my time. Maybe he'll sign a book, or I'll whatever. And then on the North Side is someone else from the rally who's also interesting.
So you use their celebrity to kind of draw people in.
Well, yeah, and now in this hypothetical situation, I'm imagining Father Flager, the organizer of the overall protest, has my emails to do these things with. And after this hypothetical follow-up, he can do more. He can send me newsletters. He can direct us towards legislative action, or whatever the goal of this particular rally was. It was about gun violence.
Yeah.
But it's also about economic justice too. I know that they're very interested. These are related. So just take me one bite of the apple. I'm telling you that if I've gotten all the way down to march in the friggin' highway,
right,
and with its 102 degrees,
then you're motivated. These are motivated people.
It's really immoral. Actually, I would actually say now it's not just impractical or poor organizing. It's actually immoral now at this point not to follow up with people who you've activated.
Because it's just like a flash in the pan.
It's a flash in the pan. We can't do that. We're way beyond that. So the Civic Lab is partially designed to create tools to distribute to such organizers as Father Flager and other civic actors and leaders, so they can get their shit done for real. And because we want to get to the day when we're not protesting anymore, because we're governing.
Exactly.
We won the mayorship, we won the presidency. The United States is transforming itself into a place of justice, but in order to get there, you've got to win elections, and it's not going to happen by whimsy.
And you got to follow up. I mean, we're running out of time a little bit here, but there's a bunch of things I wanted to ask you.
Sure.
One of them was that I know you were a part of a movement, or I don't know if you were the founder of the movement, or you joined in the movement. No Games Chicago.
No Games Chicago.
I haven't heard that in a while.
Oh, yeah.
So basically, you didn't. So there was a push to have the Olympics here, right?
Sure.
And you didn't want the Olympics.
I did not want the Olympics.
So tell me why. But I'm gonna follow up with.
Look at this.
What we got here?
This is an Olympic flyer. Let friendships shine, and it's from the Olympic Committee. It's a very slick document from 2009. Well, yeah, so the Olympic bid was prosecuted by the mayor starting in late 2006, 2007, it really ramped up. We became a semifinalist with 3 other cities in 2008, and I joined with a few people to form No Game Chicago, and we became the face of the Olympic opposition for most of 2009.
So why didn't you want the Olympics?
Well, let's see. Let me give you the reasons. One, it was financially ruinous, environmentally poisonous, and politically disastrous. Aside from that, it was a fantastic idea. So it's a city killer. So the way we describe it is it would have been the worst thing to happen to Chicago since the Chicago fire. Montreal, who hosted the 76 Summer Games, took 31 years to pay off their debt. Can you imagine?
So what did you see that everyone else didn't see?
I just did our homework. I mean, myself, Bob Quellos, the co-founder of No Games, and the other organizers simply did their homework. We spent about an hour online looking at the research, and that was enough to convince me it's a no-win proposition.
So we got the World Cup coming to North America, I think in 2026.
Yeah.
I'd assume that one of those games are going to be happening in Chicago.
Well, I'm not against having sporting events in existing stadiums.
Sure.
But I'm opposed to building things for sport. The Bear Stadium was built with a $400 million public subsidy. I'm against that. So now that we have the Bear Stadium, fine, use it for things. This Special Olympics 50th anniversary, fine. But the Olympic bid for Chicago would have destroyed many of our public parks because they were going to put stadiums and venues in parks, and including destroying historically black significant Washington Park. That's where the main stadium.
And then after the Olympics is over, then what are they going to do with these stadiums?
They're white elephants. All you have to do is look at Instagram or Facebook. There are all kinds of pictures and YouTube videos of these abandoned, sad facilities
Lots
that are
in Beijing. I mean,
yeah,
lots in Beijing.
they're white, and then they just rot.
Right.
So no, we
Right.
didn't want that for Chicago. We went to the IOC's international headquarters in Lausanne, Switzerland, to say no, thank you.
So I'm going to ask you one more thing here. You said you had a mayoral run, or sorry, not mayoral, Cook County president
Yeah.
in 2010. There were 7 points you kind of ran on. I cherry-picked 3 of them. I thought it was pretty interesting. 2, I hope you have time for. 1, reforming the juvenile system, community-based solutions, and decriminalizing the good green ganja.
Yeah.
Why, so you don't think weed's a problem?
No, weed's good. Weed's righteous, man.
Righteous.
I mean,
You must have been a hippie, I guess.
I was a hippie. I freely admit it. I inhaled,
Sure.
So the thing is, our criminal justice system is criminalizing and incarcerating young black men at an obscene rate. We have more people in prison than any place on the planet, including China, which is a complete police state. So our laws are racist, and they're putting mostly, and discriminatory. And they're putting mostly young black folks, mostly guys, in prison for that stuff. If white guys did, nothing would happen to them. So this includes drug offenses. So I'm for legalizing all drugs, frankly, but marijuana is on the table now after all these decades.
Sorry, you said you're for legalizing all drugs?
All drugs. Legalize them all. People are adults. If they want to take a drug, let them take a drug. Look what happened when we try to legalize alcohol.
Right.
We got the mafia.
Right.
So criminalizing drugs, and we're putting people in jail for no reason. I would much rather put the head of Exxon in prison. I'd much rather put the head of Wells Fargo in prison. These people are stealing your souls and our money, and they're denuding America. So these giant financial criminals are not facing any jail time. In fact, they're enjoying huge bonuses. So we're completely ass backwards with regard to that. And then for people who do break the law and run afoul of the law, not just for drugs but for other crimes, I'm for community-based solutions. I'm for peace circles and restorative justice.
Peace circles
as a way to get at, yeah.
I mean, don't you think that people, if you do a crime, that's kind of a slap on the wrist?
No. I think people in their communities are capable of policing themselves. In Chicago, we spend about 1/3 of our corporate budget on policing, and look where it's getting us. Young black guys are getting shot in the back and whatnot, and these police are running amok. And we pay out settlements. This is also covered in the book Chicago is Not Broke. Very sadly, the cost of police violence is $650 million and counting.
It's hard to put a number on lost lives.
No, you can't.
And you mentioned that.
You can't put a number on the lost lives, but you can't put a number on the settlements and the legal trials and all those paybacks that we have to give to the families. And
right.
So it calls for a radical rethinking of what policing means, not just in Chicago, but in America. But back in the day, as you pointed out, this campaign was in 2010. That's what I was talking about.
Right. So I know you've been on this public defender, civic educator for a while. I hate to bring him up, but Mr. Trump, after everything you've been doing, and then Donald Trump gets elected.
Yeah.
I mean, it's easy to feel discouraged.
Oh, God.
Give up, right?
Yeah, and how perceptive you are, young Padawan learner. Yes. Very true. The day after the election, I could not get out of bed. That's very, very true. It's a sad thing. I've talked to many old-timers like myself, and they are looking deeply at their work to say, what the hell? Maybe we've been educating the wrong people. Maybe we should have just shut the fuck up.
Right.
Just because, it's a lot of conflictions, a lot of conflicted feelings. I had what I call civic swine flu. That is, I physically felt heavy, sleepy, achy. I didn't get out of bed. I'm absolutely serious. And I know a lot of people are feeling the same way. But at the same time, look across the country. People are fighting. They're organizing. People are saying, I'm woke. Whatever that means, like I'm woke. It means they were asleep. The way that they were sort of doing their thing, playing Farmville and Halo and going out with their friends and going to the clubs and drinking those $14 crafted cocktails.
Right.
All of a sudden, all of a sudden they realize That's the specific outcome. It's not guaranteed by the laws of nature.
So where do you think this ignorance comes from? I think everyone just, I mean, I know back in the day, people used to be aware of this. I feel like, the rap is that millennials are entitled and this and that, blah, blah, blah. But, I mean, if you ask me, I think that we're living in an age where everyone's just kind of getting dumbed down.
Yeah.
Right? And so
Yeah.
and we're seeing real life consequences of that.
Yeah, well, like I say, I've spent my entire adult life trying to make people smart, assuming that once they got smart, they would stay smart and act smart. But
Right.
unfortunately, this is becoming untrue. Now, there's a lot of things that have acted against people like me, and that includes the decision at the Supreme Court where unlimited money can flow into campaigns from corporations, and that is an obscenity. So that Citizens United thing is really bad. But I mean, look, folks, whose responsibility is it? I mean, you have people like me. I'm not unique. There are many people like me in Chicago who consider themselves organizers or educators or do-gooders or whatever we want. Sure. And so we grinded away doing work in this community or that community. But come on, folks, whose responsibility is it to run the country? So if you're going to give up your responsibility and stay home and play Farmville, and and just be care about designer clothes and whatever. I'm really being a little facetious here towards my young friends, but I mean, really, what do we have to do to make you as excited about democracy as you are about Sam Mendes or
Motivational character, but I understand the point you're making.
Sure.
I have a question. Last thing, if someone's listening to this right now and they're saying, "Okay, fine, Tom, what do you want me to do?
Yeah.
What should I do right now?
Right.
What am I supposed to do?"
All right, get registered to vote for one thing,
Okay.
and register others to vote. Go to civiclab.us, contact us there, and we'll tell you more. Bring us to your community. We do meetings all over the place. We do training sessions. We've got something called the Power Institute, where we train people, civics 101, how to run for office 101, organizing 101. These sessions are starting in a few weeks. That information is all there at civiclab.us.
You have a workshop on July 18th, right?
That's right.
What is that about?
That's Chicago 101. How did our civics get so toxic? Myself and my colleague Jonathan Peck, who's also a longtime organizer, he did work in South Africa and in Soweto, in Nicaragua, and on the south side of Chicago. Together, we will take you from before the white man got to Chicago right up to the current machine. We name names and we tell you a little bit about how this city operates as a way to prepare you to change it.
Well, this has been eye-opening. Raphael, you learned something today? You sure did. You kept your eyes open, my man. So, listen, this is the
all right.
This is just something I'm going to do because it's crazy that I came here and I read this book and this guy's sitting next to me. Can you sign this for me, man?
I will.
I know. I don't know how often this happens. I'm sure it happens quite a bit. But listen, people, dreams come true. Okay, you have a goal, make it happen.
I'm signing this to say, Marcus, all power to the
people.
Let's
do it.
All right. Tresser. You can reach me at www.civiclab.us or tom@civiclab.us.
All right, thanks a lot, Tom. That's all the time we got today, man. Raphael, you can close us out. Thank you, and we'll see you next week on for another segment of whatever this is.